Welcome back to another UNC basketball podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're checking us out on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is our director of basketball recruiting and our chief basketball analyst coach, David Sisk. And David, the last time we discussed the Tar Heels, that was before the Notre Dame game. And since then, the Tar Heels won 3 in a row, beat Notre Dame, won at Miami, won at home against Syracuse, and we're very competitive on the road this past weekend in Tallahassee against a good Florida State team. I think it's fair to say that since we last talked, the Tar Heels have showed progress. They certainly have had an uptick, and there's a couple of things that should give Carolina fans a bit of optimism that some of these parts collectively are heading in the same direction. They're just not meshing quite the way that they probably will in the next few weeks. So what are your thoughts on that in the last 4 games, sort of in a snapshot?
Well, I agree with what you said. So to do that, I really have to condense the last 4 games into one game, because I can't take a whole lot from Miami and Notre Dame and Syracuse. It's kind of frustrating to watch teams like that play. They're not physical. They kind of lull you into their kind of game. And it's just, shooting threes is kind of like a rec league game, really unathletic. And honestly, North Carolina does what a lot of young teams do, and that's play to the level of the competition. So, they won 3 games there, and I really took nothing from it. Yesterday I did, and I think it's probably easy to say that in the game that North Carolina lost, they probably played their best. I think when you look at Florida State, for starters, I think they're good. I've heard a lot of people since yesterday, and these are not North Carolina people, these are national folks, saying that Miami could be the best team in the ACC. I mean, I look at them in the backcourt. They've got 2, even though one of them didn't play yesterday, Scotty Barnes, they've got 2 first-rounders. In the backcourt, they've got 7-footers. They bring 7-2 off the bench. They can all run. They can all, most of them shoot the ball. They defend. They're very lengthy and long. And, you look up with a minute left, and North Carolina's a point away. When Sharp got, I think it was 72-71, if I'm not mistaken, when Sharp got the tip. And then Florida State comes down, and they take the most interesting man in the world, Raquan Gray, and put him in a big ball screen. And I thought I like that look. Florida State's the only team in the country that I know can do that. And so you've got 2 bigs. You've got Hurst and I keep calling him Garrison Hurst, or used to be running back for Georgia, Garrison Brooks. And
it's a long time ago.
Oh man, I'm telling my age. You see this gray?
Yeah.
So
I see it.
Yeah. So Garrison Brooks and Daron Sharp, they've got those 2 out in ball screen situations together, and they get fouled. They make the layup to and one, make the foul shot. It's 75-71, and North Carolina just can't get stops to catch up. So we've talked about this team being, it is what it is. I think a lot of the things we've talked about that were strengths are still strengths. A lot of things that were weaknesses are still weaknesses. The one thing I think they've added that's went from a weakness to a strength is that they can shoot the 3-pointer now. And I think Kerwin Walton, since we last spoke, him going into the starting lineup, I think has made a big change for this team. I look at it now, if they'll quit turning the ball over, their team can score. But they still do the same things they did well. They rebound, they get the ball inside, they can get to the foul line, but they shoot it now. So weaknesses to me, turnovers, which are killers, and I still don't know how well they defend. I've still got issues with them on that end. But, they have turned one weakness into a strong point, and the goal for Roy Williams is to try to do that with as many factors of this team as he can do, because we're getting into February here before long, and that's when you've got to be playing your best. So hopefully they'll be able to do that.
What I like that they did in those first 3 games of the 4 that we're talking about, the ones that they won, were a team that reached a point where Roy had to shake things up the way he did. Now, Roy says it doesn't matter who starts, guys. Come on, it doesn't matter who starts. But if that's the case, then why do you change the starting lineup? I mean, you shake things up. He did shake things up. Some messages were sent. Some may have taken a little longer than others, but every point he wanted to get across when he did that, I think those points have now gotten across. And what we saw in the first 3 games of this stretch, they were behind inside the 10-minute mark in all 3 of those games. And a couple of times they were behind, 59-50, 57-50, and they battled back. They didn't play great coming back, but they battled back. They got stops on the defensive end. And you got to like when some of the older guys were able to bail them out. Leaky with the bucket against Notre Dame, Andrew Platek with the bucket against Miami, with Leaky on the ball at the point on that possession. So I think, when you win, you feel good. And this club, after not playing very well, after losing its state the way that they did, after Roy shaking things up, they needed to feel pretty good. They needed to feel a little bit like North Carolina. And I think they started to. And I really believe that the reason that they hung yesterday or Saturday in Tallahassee when they got down 11 was because of what they did in those other 3 games. They believed that they could come back. They didn't wilt. They had a disposition in that game that I'm not sure they would have had a month earlier. So there's the value of those 3 games. But I agree with you. I think Saturday was their best performance. I know FSU didn't have Scotty Barnes, but you laid out FSU perfectly. That is like a professional college team in a lot of ways. They're older. Leonard Hamilton's a really good coach. His guys know exactly what he wants them to do. And you're right. One of the best basketball players ever from Billings, Montana, I would guess. And next to Brent Musburger, maybe the most famous guy from Billings, Montana, Raekwon Gray. So that was, I thought that was a good performance. I think it's something that they can build on. Roy was asked afterward the moral victory question, which he generally don't ask guys like Roy Williams very often. And he resisted the temptation, I think, to say yes. And he said, yeah, it's cliche to say you don't take moral victories. That was his way of saying, you know what? I'm okay. We lost, but we got better. And you got Anthony Harris on the court, and he saw what they could be with him on the court. And I think
I like the way he answered it because, I think he said what all coaches think, and you really don't want to say it around your players, and you got to be careful. But he said, I just want us to get better every game and play our best. And that's really all you can ask for. But you'll be surprised how many coaches will say that behind closed doors to their staff or in a staff meeting, but you wouldn't dare say that to your players because you don't want to give them an out.
Well, you don't want to make them comfortable losing.
Yeah. And like you say, winning is you have to learn how to do it. It's a skill. And I don't know that Notre Dame and Syracuse can get out of their own way if you want to know the truth. But, it was big for North Carolina because if you go back, you reverse back a little bit farther, they shouldn't have lost to Georgia Tech. So they lose tough ones, and even North Carolina State. And I think North Carolina State's pretty good. They're not nearly as good as Florida State.
When they're on their high end, they are. When they're on their low end, we saw
last week that game at the 10-minute mark. North Carolina State started wearing on them. They got it to 2, or North Carolina did. They got it to 2 several times, and they just couldn't close. And even at the 10-minute mark, I'm saying, well, they're getting ready to catch them. They're just wearing them down. That just all that post depth physicality, it's wearing them down, and they never could get over the top. So I kind of felt like in both those games, I wouldn't say find a way to lose, but they definitely couldn't find a way to win. And, like you say, those 3 games, there's no doubt that was not murderer's row by any stretch. But, it may have been important to give this team some confidence. And a lot of times that's what a team needs.
Another way to look at the FSU game, too, is think of it this way. Carolina got out-rebounded. They've only been out-rebounded one other time this year. That was Kentucky. So they got out-rebounded. They gave up 22 points off turnovers. And FSU was 26-27 from the free throw line, which is the 3rd highest percentage ever against UNC by a team that attempted 20 free throws or more in a game. And yet, inside of 2 minutes, it was Carolina had a chance. They had the ball with a chance. And they still did a lot of things not well. A lot of stuff needs to improve. The freshmen in the open court, some of the decisions that RJ and Caleb made, and even Andrew Platek made a bad decision in the open court, and Carolina did not get buckets in the fast break and transition when they should have. There were also some of the fouls that Carolina committed, some of the help side defense that was non-existent. There were stretches in the second half in which they weren't early in the second half. They weren't boxing out at all, and FSU just had carte blanche to get to the ball and get up some second chance opportunities. So there's so much that needs cleaning up. Yet they were right there, and I thought FSU played pretty well. Leonard was fairly pleased with the way his team played. That tells me that the base of Carolina is much further ahead than the base of Carolina was 4 or 5 weeks ago.
One thing, going back and watching the game yesterday, North Carolina goes on binges. And I call them maybe a binge team right now. What I mean by that,
both ways.
You take me, and I'll say, okay, New Year's, I'm not going to eat any more sweets, no junk food, any of that. I'll do good for 6 weeks or so, and all of a sudden you look up and I've got Little Debbie's boxes stashed all over the house, and I've got a case of soft drinks in the fridge, and you do that for a couple of days and you feel bad about yourself, and then you go back and you clean up for a while. And that's what North Carolina reminded me of yesterday, because I watched it obviously on television where you were there. So I'm listening to Jay Billis and that crew, and they're talking about at the end of the half how well North Carolina had taken care of the ball, and that was a huge issue. But I didn't feel that way, because they had 4 unforced turnovers, 4 turnovers right before the half. A couple were unforced. That one by Caleb Love right before the half with a couple of seconds left. I mean, I've never seen anything like that one in a college game. And then they come out in the first minute and a half of the second half, and I think they had 3 more. They either had 6 or 7.
They had 3 in the first 2.5 minutes of the second half.
Okay, so there was a 3.5 minute stretch. They had 6 or 7 turnovers. And, and then they cleaned it up. But those binges, when they do that, they let the other team make a run.
Yep.
And they're playing well. And the next thing you know, they go from down 2 to down 10 before you can turn around. In the second half, they had 2 4-point swings where you had turnover, layup. They come right back and down and turn it over again, layup. They did that twice. And then they had one of them was turnover and then missed layup, and Florida State shot layups on the other end. Then they had a 5-point swing where Playtech missed a layup on one end, if I'm not mistaken, that's who it was. And Florida State goes down on the other end, lays it up, and gets fouled, a 5-point swing. So you're talking 2 4s and a 5-point swing, and those are just things that you can't afford to have happen.
Do you think one of the reasons the turnover numbers were down the first 16 minutes of the first half was because the guards weren't really pushing it? There was a lot of just dribbling on the perimeter. They were having issues. Most of the points they scored in the interior were high-low stuff. The bigs had, I think, 5 assists and should have had more. There were a couple of foul situations where they didn't get assists on those. There was just a lot of dribbling, not great movement on the perimeter. So FSU didn't really have to go out and pressure much. They just Carolina would play into bad possessions because the point guards, especially Caleb, still having trouble seeing everything, reading everything, reacting to everything. And I think they started to push it a little bit more later in the half and into the second half. And I think that was one of the reasons the turnovers picked up.
I'm going to be honest with you. I really don't know. And the reason I say that is because there were some unforced turnovers that North Carolina made. There was 2 back-to-back, kind of in transition a little bit, where and they made 3 turnovers in a row. 2 of them was unforced. Playtech kind of comes down in pseudo whatever transition or secondary or whatever, and nobody's even guarding him. He tries to go between the legs with it and loses the ball, and they had that turnover there. Then there was another one that Caleb Love made on the other side when nobody guarded him. So it's like it was just like they came out of the woodwork yesterday with no rhyme or no reason. So I don't know. And maybe if and I think that's probably the thing frustrating to Roy about it as they work is I don't know if there's anything that you can really label or pinpoint and say, okay, this is why we're doing it.
Well, I think movement, from my vantage point, they moved the media at FSU this year we're kind of up at a perch. It's similar to Georgia Tech, where it's kind of like.
Have you been on the floor this year? Everything I see from every media member,
they don't let it. We're not allowed near the floor.
I've not seen anybody close. Everybody I've seen is like being.
The only people that you see on TV that are close are game personnel from the league, from the schools, like Steve Kirshner, the SID. He's down near the floor, but they don't let any. We can't even get down the floor. I can't get down there for any reason.
I love these benches. When you're watching the teams carry on, the coaches and all that. And I noticed Roy one time when the team was off the court, he had them gathered up. He kind of made a wholesale substitution. So they come off and you can see he's there. The play's going on. He's got his back to it and he's got his guys and they're huddled over there.
Yeah.
Who came off. So it kind of reminds you of a defensive coordinator or something, having his guys what offense has got the ball in football.
Well, one of the things I've thought is interesting is you can get an idea early in a game how dialed in a team is by the way the benches are.
Yeah.
Because yesterday was the first game I've done all year where there are actually fans in the building. There have been some families. There were like 300 people in Iowa. There was nobody in Asheville, nobody in Cleveland. There were maybe 250 people at NC State. At Carolina last week, I counted 51 in the Syracuse game that were not people that work for the school that were in the stands. So there was a little bit of noise at Florida State, but generally speaking, you can hear everything. You can hear the benches.
Yesterday, and it's amazing the things you see.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go off topic for a second.
That's okay.
Kentucky's playing Auburn yesterday. And there's a tie-up late in the game that there's a lot of reaching in there and grabbing, and it's on the Kentucky end, and they call a jump ball. And there's managers under the goal that normally wouldn't be there. And one of the managers from Kentucky jumps up on the baseline, and he's up anyway on the baseline. And he's going foul, and the referee goes like that. He turns and does a Bruce Lee karate kick on the basket support and then gets in it and he's beating on the basket support like that with both fists, and somebody has to get over and just get him by the belt and pull him away before he gets tech. And they're down on the baseline, so you never see that anyway. But he abused the goal when they call, and it was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Well, a lot of times when players stand up in the pre-COVID era, officials would come by the bench, sit down. Now it doesn't matter. Most of the teams are standing up throughout the entire game. The only guys that sit down are the ones that just came out of the game. They're getting a little drink and they're sitting down for a few minutes, and then they're standing up a lot of the time. So it is quite different.
I think the referees probably want it too. They probably like a little bit of noise. I don't care if they are on me about my calling. I want a little bit of noise.
Well, that's another point. Didn't plan on talking. This is just a rather organic conversation here, but Carolina played in front of a crowd yesterday. And FSU had its band there, small band, but they had the band. They had about 10 dance team girls, about 8 cheerleaders. They had 2,800 people in the building where they had us sitting. It's kind of at the corner up in the second tier near all the luxury suites. So, you could still smell the booze up there a little bit. And so they had a good atmosphere for a noon game. And one of the really cool things that Leonard Hamilton's done is he's made basketball really important at FSU. So they're into the game, and they had a good game to watch. And Carolina, for the first time, those kids played in front of a crowd. In fact, their tunnel was over by the FSU band, the dance team with cheerleaders. And I shot a short video of them running out of the tunnel. And I just thought to myself how weird it must have been for them, as all years they were adapting to playing in front of nobody. And suddenly they're running out of the tunnel, and there's a lot of noise in that tunnel when they're coming out because the FSU fight song was playing. You have to adapt. And for these freshmen that have never played in front of anybody before at the college level, they not only had to do that, but they had to do it against a team that wins a ton of games at home. Maybe the best team in the ACC certainly was a year ago, a club that could have won the national title had there been a tournament. So I think when you lay all those things out there, that makes Saturday, I keep saying yesterday, we're recording this Sunday night, a little bit more of a positive for Carolina. And I think they can grow from this.
In the SEC, just about all of them are red states, and you've had 2,500, 3,000 people just about every gym. So it's kind of weird how it goes from place to place.
I think Saturday might be the only game I cover this year in which there's a crowd.
I was going to ask you that. Would South Carolina or
Clemson has some fans, but right now Clemson only allows one visiting member of the media that covers the visiting team in, and we're kind of rotating. Like I was the one at Florida State, and then IC and the NNO were not there. They were at Georgia Tech, so Clemson's in a couple of weeks, and we're just going to go through the rotation. I'm not sure who's going to be there. If another credential comes open, I'll have an opportunity. But I mean, like at Duke, there's going to be no media at Duke this year. For no Duke home games, no media. So the first Carolina Duke game is in Cameron, and there will be no media at that game. So my streak of Carolina Duke games is going to end. And some other people have longer streaks than me, like Brett Friedlander's done like 64 in a row or something like that. So, but I think because of that, Carolina will play in front of a crowd, a little bit of a crowd at Little John. But they go to BC, there won't be a crowd. There's nobody at Syracuse. They go up to Pitt next week. There will not be a crowd there. They go to Charlottesville. I don't think there's a crowd. They just family at at UVA. So for me personally, the next opportunity would be the postseason, and I'm not sure 100% what the ACC or the NCAA is going to do. Although I'm hearing the NCAA is not going to have any crowd either.
It looks to me like the state of North Carolina when I'm watching public high school and I'm going back and watching some of these videos. I go back and watch DeMarco Dunn play and Dontre Styles. They're playing in masks to me like. So
they are playing in masks.
And I've seen some states do that. And, of course, I live here in Tennessee.
Makes no sense, but they are.
We've been full bore. The state of Tennessee's been full bore of everything, basically, except downtown Nashville. And everything else, you would never know anything's happened. But, and you tell – there'll be games canceled and here in Tennessee and folks will be griping about it. And I'm like, look, a lot of states are not playing at all. And North Carolina and Wisconsin and others are playing, a mask on. I see where West Virginia has just started their high school schedule. Isaac Neely, is a recruit and they, their schedules came out. They don't start high school play till March. So a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, as far as Carolina goes, you mentioned the perimeter shooting, and you go back to Georgia Tech when the shakeup occurred. Since then, Carolina's shooting 36% from three-point range, and that's including the 5 for 24 game against Syracuse last week. So if you exclude that and you look at the other games during this stretch, I know you really can't toss them out, but let's do it anyway. They're at 40%, excluding the Syracuse game, in which they were 5 for 24, which means they've been consistently in the 8 or 9 for 21 range in those other games, which means I think that that's who they're starting to become. Kerwin Walton's 15 for 34 in the stretch. He's 44%. Caleb Love, and this is what I want to talk to you about more than anything. Caleb Love was 4 for 34. From three-point range going into the Georgia Tech game. Since then, he's 8 for 22, 36%. That's a huge uptick. The problem with him is that he's 4 for 24 inside the arc in that stretch, which is 16%. What have you seen? Two-part question here. Start with the perimeter game in general. I know you hit on a little bit, but what have you seen other than Walton? Everyone thinks it's just Walton, but Leaky Black has 5 threes in this stretch. Playtech has 3. Garrison Brooks has a couple. Anthony Harris hit one in his only attempt Saturday at FSU. They have more than one guy that can shoot out there. Is that what you're seeing kind of come into fruition right now?
Well, one player can create space. So I don't think that it's an accident really that Kerwin Walton becomes a bigger part of it, that it kind of frees people up. And I've noticed one thing too. I've been on the bench before and played before when a guy makes a shot and it just loosens everybody else up. So, that may be a thing. You've got a young team. Perhaps it's just adjusting and getting used to the flow because, of RJ Davis and Caleb Love. But, man, Caleb was a flamethrower in high school. So it's not a surprise to me that he's not adjusted totally to the point guard spot because he was a scoring guard in high school. He was not a 10 assist guy. I don't know if he had 10 assists on the year, but I'm going to tell you what, he had hundreds and hundreds of points last year. But, man, he could shoot the ball, and he could shoot deep off a high degree of difficulty. off moves, off dribbles, or people hanging all over him. So I expected more from that, but, there had to be an adjustment. Now, the 2-point part of it, I don't know. I know a lot of times when you're in high school, you get those guys can get to the rim. So the mid-range that's a big deal right there, because how many times has he had to settle for a 10, 12-foot pull-up in a high school game? He just shot the three or he got two.
Or a highly challenged floater from like 8 feet.
Yeah, and one thing about it too, you're talking about different animals in college as far as just strength, weight, size, length than in high school. In high school, you get into the lane and you're shooting, that other post player may be 6'4", 185 pounds. In college, he's 6'10", 250. So, you're taking more hits in the body. You're having to power through taking the hit and scoring. So there's a lot of things that fit into that just takes time to adjust to better competition.
Seemingly every game, there's a move he makes where he gets inside the lane area. And it's one of those plays where you think, man, that was an automatic in high school and no chance in college. Like he doesn't anticipate what the defender's going to do very well. He hasn't yet fully adjusted to that. And that's got to affect his psyche a lot. And I don't know how much it affects the other parts of his game. Roy has told us several times, when the shot starts falling for him, he thinks a lot of other stuff's going to kind of settle down. Because a lot of guys, especially young players, they kind of value their performance, whether the ball's going through the net. And he's learning how to value other aspects of the game. And as you said, he wasn't really on the ball as a point guard in high school, and he's now having to do that and feed bigs and that kind of stuff. And looks like he goes through stretches where he really struggles with the recognition aspect of the game. So is that kind of, could it take that long for a guard, even a long guard, 6'4"?
It does this year.
To that?
This is the worst possible year to depend on freshmen. And I think you see teams that do that this year that have tried to replace Kentucky, Michigan State, who are, and I think Duke's fallen into that. That they are depending on. I think North Carolina's probably ahead of the curve. If you think Caleb Loves is struggling, go watch B.J. Boston. And you didn't have, I've heard a lot of talk. You'll hear it from a Jay Billis and from other people, but I've even had high school coaches. I'll hear them talk about. They'll want to talk about North Carolina or something to me when I see them, and they'll say, man, you can tell just not being able to work with the coaches, that's got to be hard in the summer. All that normal prep work that you do for that young players have to have. You don't have exhibitions. That's a big issue when you've got 2 or 3 of those games to try to preseason type games, really get your feet wet. And North Carolina's schedule this year, outside of North Carolina Central and Charleston, they've not had, the High Point game got canceled, and they've not really had, you usually have 6 or 7 games where they're playing mid to low majors, and that's where you get a lot of this stuff worked out.
Plus you get the secret scrimmage and the exhibition game too.
Yeah, you're not getting to practice time as much. You're not getting to meet as much with the coaches. And, man, I just think it's tough on freshmen this year. So
why do you think North Carolina is ahead of the curve? Give me an example.
Just look at these other teams' records, and I do work for North Carolina and Kentucky both, and the last thing I want to do is come on here and talk about the other program that I work for or that, because that's the last thing that subscribers.
You work for covering, you don't work for them.
Yeah, right. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah, they don't pay you. We are totally unaffiliated.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that.
That's okay.
Cover.
Because of our name on the site, people tend to.
I work for North Carolina rivals, just like I work for Kentucky rivals.
Yeah, very quickly, people tend to think of the name of the site that we're like affiliated or we kind of root for UNC. No, we.
I have people here ask me all the time. So let me get this straight. You work in recruiting for North Carolina, and I'm like, no. So
I know when I'm on the road, I had an Uber driver the other day ask me, he says, "Oh, you didn't travel with the team?" I think, no. A,
why do you think
they
I'm
would never want me around? B, I'm totally independent. I got nothing to do with them.
Well, the question you ask on that, why? Number one, I think because North Carolina has obvious strengths, and we've talked about that, and a lot of it's the post game. So when you look at a Garrison Brooks and Armando Baycott and Leaky Black and Andrew Platek and Black may help this team more than anybody knows because of the experience, and obviously the post players do. And so they've got that factor. So you're not depending on all freshmen. And I just think just the overall feel with that, and there may be other things to it, but I just feel like when you go watch some of these other teams and you watch North Carolina play, there are some turnovers are a big issue on both. A lack of outside shooting. I could look early on at Kentucky and I could look at North Carolina and I saw so many similarities, but Kentucky's just kind of regressed and not made improvements where North Carolina has. And, they've had that freshman. I'm going to say this, probably of all the freshmen I've seen, Kerwin Walton has probably made that step as much as anybody that I cover. So, when you talked about Caleb Love's playing better, I thought R.J. Davis played well yesterday. So they're starting to be a little bit of that comfort zone, but I think there's that system that they play within. It's maybe hard to learn, but it still probably can give them some comfort at times. But I think all in all, playing with some older players helps. There's that mix.
To go back to what you just said about Kerwin, having a responsibility as a freshman of needing to score, needing to be a guy who can put the ball in the basket, it's a pretty huge responsibility. But at the same time, there's not a lot else that's prominently on his plate. I mean, he's got to play defense and those kind of things. Yeah. And he's okay. I mean, he gets late in games, right now with Anthony Harris, and he was swapping yesterday, pulling Kerwin out, swapping him in offense for defense. Kerwin not on the court for defense, and Anthony was. Do you think maybe he's adjusted because it's like, you tell a home run hitter, just hit home runs. Don't worry about your batting average. Just hit home runs. It's what with Kerwin, just put the ball in the basket.
It's what Jay Billis said yesterday. He said, look, Kerwin's job is catch and shoot. And when he's catch and shoot, it's automatic. And Kerwin's always been able, ever since I watched him as a junior in high school, he's been able to do that. Yeah. So he's able to fit within that. And then you say Florida State as well, coach as they are, they had some situations yesterday where they lost him. They doubled on a post at one time off him. And then I'm going to tell you something else too. North Carolina gets an inordinate amount of threes off offensive rebounds, where they get an offensive rebounds, everybody's going to the boards, and then when they come out with it and kick out, you're in a scramble situation. They can just catch and fire. So they've got the type of team, even with at times early in the season, it appeared like teams just packed it in and dared them to shoot. Now you can't dare them to shoot, and it gives them a little bit more space because they can go inside out. Like I said, I think it gives North Carolina a better chance to rebound. So there's some things there that I think play within Kerwin's wheelhouse.
He had a wide open three from the left corner in the first half yesterday that Garrison got the ball and froze the defense. You can see the defense still respects Garrison's offense, froze the defense, and he had a little nifty little bounce pass kind of behind him a little bit to his right. Kerwin was wide open, and of course, when he's wide open like that, it's nothing but net.
They had one in the second half where they made the extra pass for Leaky Black, and Billis played the replay, and Billis talked about it. Leaky Black catches the ball, and all he does is look at the rim, and they run at him, and he kicks to Kerwin, and Kerwin shoots the open three. So, I think the team starting to understand that. And you ask another thing, why maybe is North Carolina ahead the curve? And maybe the freshmen playing better. I think the basketball IQ is a little bit better, to be honest with you.
Well, one thing, Roy doesn't change things up. He changed the lineup up, but they know what they're supposed to do, and they work it. It's like an old football coach that had, 8 plays left, 8 plays right, and that means he got 16 plays. He's going to run them over and over. There's a standard with a few things you got to do, and you must do them right, and they will work it and work it and work it until they get that stuff right. Anthony Harris.
Brett Auerbach tell a story when he had Bill Russell and those guys. He had 6 plays. Okay.
Did he need that many?
It was play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Run 4, run 2. He said the players come to him one day, one of the players, and said, Coach, everybody's catching on to it. When we call play 2, everybody knows what it is. He said, let's mix it up tonight. Let's switch it up. When you call play number 6, that's going to be play number 3 and such and so on. And anyway, he does it. And he says they're running the wrong plays. And I call half of them's running 6 and half of them's running 3. I read this in his book. And he comes in after the game and he says, no, from now on, 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3. And let's run it so well till they stop it. So he goes through his career and wins how many 13 titles or whatever, it was 6 plays.
He used to sit about 15 rows up midcourt at a lot of George Washington home games, and I used to coach some of their games. Yeah. By the way, they play at the Smith Center too, but it's only like 5,000 seats. Anthony Harris last year played in 5 games. His debut was at UVA, so he didn't play the first handful of games because he was overcoming a knee injury from the year before, his senior year in high school. I guess it was the 5th game he played, he got hurt again. He actually was the reason they beat UCLA in Vegas last year. He was an energy guy, really kind of a player that you figure if they would have had him the rest of the year, some of those games they lost in the buzzer, maybe they would have won those games. So you got to see him finally on Saturday. And for you, who nobody's really seen a ton of him at the college level, what were your thoughts on the way he played, the energy he played with, and the way the team responded to him being in the game and kind of giving him a little bit of a B12 injection?
I started to do the entire film review just on him.
Huh.
But there were so many different little parts of the game yesterday to me that stuck out that I thought were huge. Turnovers, a couple of things, sets at Florida State ran, a couple at North Carolina ran. I really wanted to go with that. But Harris played well enough to really, have me say, hey, I just need to dedicate the whole thing to him. And the thing is, he came in right off the bat. I think he played 9 minutes and they were plus 10 point differential. And he also, when he came in, it was, I don't even know before the game if the plan was for him to play, but it just appeared to me like they were taking on.
He wasn't expecting it. He wasn't expecting it, but he was prepared to. Just
about 11 or 12 minutes.
Let me jump in real fast. Sorry to cut you off, but this will kind of help you out. In the middle of FSU's 13-3 run that led to a 54-43 lead, which is what the score was when he entered the game, during the middle of that run when Carolina was just like melting in a sense, Roy went over to Doug Halverson, who was sitting at the baseline scores table, which used to be for media. And Doug kind of leaned in. Roy said something to him, 7-8 seconds. There was an exchange. Roy went back to his spot. Halverson went straight to Harris, who was in the second row of where the players were seated, said something to him. Anthony hopped up. He got on the bike that was right near the bench. And then Doug's like, no, don't do that. We're not about playing in the game. And he was doing some limbering on that baseline in front of the FSU bench, which was wild. And he was in the game 2 minutes later. By the time I typed up that tweet and sent it out, he was going in the game. And he played 4 minutes, asked to come out because he was winded. And in those 4 minutes, he had 3 assists. And I think that changed Carolina's disposition.
I just looked, too, at the speed and the energy that he played with and those short spurts. And North Carolina was treading water when he came in.
Yeah.
And just all of a sudden, just 2 like assists, bang, bang, but they were quick. They were transition-type plays. They were high-energy plays. And the team just erupted. You talk about watching teams on the bench. You could just see the energy level go up when he was there. And then, he drew 2 illegal screens defensively. He's up pressuring the ball. So everything he did, it was kind of like, hey, I'm not sure, maybe I've not played in a year what I can do, what I'm going to do is when I go in a game, I'm going to give it every ounce of effort that I can. And I'm going to give that energy to the team, and we'll see what happens. And, I think probably making that 3, that was probably icing on the cake. But getting out, running, and making that – and those were – I'm sitting there watching. I said, he's been watching a game while he's been out, because those were high IQ plays that he made. But energy defensively, running the floor, and it just kind of got the team going.
The only other guy in the team I've seen do much on the baseline this year has occasionally been play tech. His game winner against Miami was a baseline play. Anthony Harris had a baseline drive on the left side where he darted past defenders. Garrison Brooks beautifully rolled to the rim. He found him, dished, got the bucket, drew the foul, hit the free throw, got a conventional 3-point play. Adding that baseline element, he's not going to go there a ton because he's only 6'4", and he's going to get crowded in there every once in a while. But the fact that he can do that, and they now have that element, I think is huge. Let me tell you something. He had played in 5 organized games over the prior 25 months because he got hurt in high school in December, didn't play again, played 5 games last year. It had been 383 days since the Yale game when he got hurt. And I will never forget. I've seen guys get hurt. I've seen teams deal with injuries a lot in football, basketball, hockey, all the different sports I've covered. But that team was distraught when he got hurt. I mean, they were having a lot of bad things happen. They were losing guys left, right, and center. Brandon Robinson was in and out. Cole Anthony was out at that time. And Anthony is so well liked in that room that team was devastated at the news when he got hurt that night. And then we had a presser with Roy on a Friday morning 2 days later. And that was when they released the news that Anthony was out for the year. And they were devastated. So the excitement you saw Saturday in Tallahassee were a lot of those same guys seeing the guy that they hurt for so much 13 months ago get in the game, and not only get in, but had a positive impact on the game. So, you're a coach. You know how what may appear as a somewhat small thing to the outside world can be a huge thing within a team and very uplifting. And it can kind of change the course for a club.
And I'm curious to see what this does with the roster, with playing time from here on out, because what you mentioned, you're 6'4". So, if that's more time for him, exactly how do you juggle it? Because you could be looking at it, and a lot of teams do it and they're successful. I don't know how well it fits into the North Carolina system to have 3 players on the floor 6'4", smaller. But I thought the game was too fast for Play Tech yesterday. I thought he struggled. I think and I know Leakey didn't have a good game compared to what he's had as far as the box score goes. He had a couple of threes. He's had games in double figures. He didn't have that.
I think the length of FSU on the perimeter was an issue for Play Tech.
Yeah, but I really think the speed and athleticism. It just looked to me at times like it was too fast for Play Tech. It wasn't too fast for Harris. No. I'm looking at him. I'm like, man, he's quick compared to him. So I guess the question is, what do you get into? Are you playing 3 guys, 6'4", smaller? There'll be teams in the ACC you can do it against. Wake Forest, that's one that they need to drop the hammer on, and they don't need to do like they did against Notre Dame and Syracuse. And I don't think a 2 or 3 point win helped. We've talked about it helping. They need to build confidence and just go out and like I said, just lay the wood to Wake Forest.
I agree.
And then you've got North Carolina State in a return game. They would like to go 2-0, and then you've got Pitt. I think they'd like to go 3-0.
It's a pretty good club.
5 when they play Duke, and that could be big. But the question is, and I'm not digressing what we're talking about, what's that rotation going to look like? And that's something they have. I'm sure they had to go back. Okay, he looked really good. How much do we play him? Who do we play him with? What's our lineups need to look like on the floor? And I guarantee you that's been a big topic of discussion from the coaches here in the last 24 hours.
Well, they're going to need more intel. So they had 9 minutes against FSU. Anthony played fairly well when he was in last year. So what we saw Saturday was maybe a little older version of what we saw a year ago. And I do agree. I think the IQ, the thinking the game, he said that he's been paying attention to every game like he was going in at the next dead ball.
Yeah.
And to paraphrase what he said. So I do think that the experience of being in the program and understanding the culture and understanding how Roy does things gave him an edge, even though Love and Davis have played more games. Now, as far as what it does to I think it'll affect the rotation some. I can see perhaps Puff Johnson might not get the call as often now. He plays that stint in the first half.
I hate to say this. I don't think he, from what I've seen, I don't think he needs.
He had a really, really rough sequence yesterday. Very rough. And you know what?
That pass where it got stolen in the backcourt when on the side out. I mean, he threw it across his body, left-handed to the backcourt. And when you throw to the backcourt, you do that when the clock's running out. That's your safety valve. You do that at the 4-second mark or the 3.5 or less. He threw that at the 2 count. He didn't see anybody, and he just chunked it.
He telegraphed it. I mean, he was
got to lay up the other way, yeah.
Yeah, well, and then he had the sequence continued on the other end. I mean, he's still a developing player. I think he's going to be a nice player for Carolina, but maybe his minutes are trimmed and he's not playing a whole lot anyway. I could see certain scenarios where maybe it's Playtex minutes go a little bit. Maybe instead of 29 minutes a game for Leaky, maybe there's 25. You might get 4 here, 4 there, 4 there. And perhaps, depending on how Love and Davis are playing, if one of them's having a really bad game, maybe gets more than minutes there. He's not a 1. And so people were asking about that. He's a 2. He's going to be a 2. He's not going to be on the ball. He's not Shamon Williams. So he might be able to pick up 16, 18, 20 minutes a game for a while. And I don't know if there will be a point where he gets more. I don't know if they need him to get more right now because we got to see him play more. 9 minutes is not.
You play one of those guards, play him at the 2 and play Leaky at the 3. That's pretty athletic backcourt.
Well, I actually think that when he's out there with the 3 guards and one of the wings is Kerwin, his movement might help Kerwin get free a little bit more because one of the problems, especially in the first half Saturday, was the guards. Like Caleb didn't make the defense move. Yeah. They didn't swings. They just dribbled around, and you got to make the defense move. Anthony can make the defense move a little bit, and if he can find Kerwin on the other side of the floor, which this team does not, they don't skip pass very well. Kerwin could get some spot-up shots out there because of that.
Yeah, I agree.
And, it would be interesting, too, and I know we're not going to see much of it because Roy understands that for this team to ultimately reach its potential or get close to reaching its potential this year and then next year, he needs Caleb on the ball. He needs RJ on the ball. But it would be interesting to see a few sequences, a few possessions with Leaky on the ball, Kerwin at one wing, and Anthony Harris at the other wing. And you could pick whoever you want down low. That'd be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see how they kind of mix and match here. And, that brings another player into the equation. Like I said, I guarantee you there's been a lot of talk with the coaches here since yesterday afternoon.
Well, and I'm sure they're glad to have this to finally talk about because Roy was getting annoyed with us asking about, hey, Andy, what's the latest on Anthony Harris? He's like, guys, he's not going to parachute in the middle of a game. It's not like we're going to surprise you on it. It's just to wait and see. And I think Roy had gotten fed up. I think Roy had gotten fed up, and he made a beeline to Doug Halverson. It wasn't like, hey, you think maybe he can play? It was like, look, if he can play, we need that guy now. Yeah. And it changed the game and almost won. So I think that Roy is thrilled to have that option now.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said.
All right, he's David Sisk. I'm Andrew Jones. You've been listening to their UNC basketball podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com and our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. If you like this video, go ahead and click like, hit the notification bell so you get updates every time we upload a video. And we do a ton of them, not just us talking, but UNC press conferences, player interviews, all kinds of great stuff. So go hit that bell and get all your updates. And go to TarHeelIllustrated.com. It's just $8.33 a month. You can get all of David's wisdom there that he doesn't express in these videos. It's a good deal. Anything else, David?
That's it. That's it. I don't know about the wisdom part. That's it.
Well, and you know what? And people are treated to the beard today. I had to do a double take. I thought I was doing a podcast with Larry Fedora. I would have known not to ask about quarterbacks.
Now, and I didn't guzzle about 6 Red Bulls during this.
All right. He's David. I'm AJ. Thanks for stopping by.